Alrighty, well, welcome to the first week of our Settlers of Catan on Colonist.io season. We got a really fun matchup here between four of our contenders. Anish, would you care to go through our four contenders and introduce them?
Yeah, with Orange, we have John Von 419 playing second, up now. Uh, after her is Joey Donuts playing the blue. Also has played in these seasons before. John Von has actually won one of our seasons, one of our
Yeah.
tourneys. We have Joni 9773. Who is playing for the red and in the fourth position. And first position, we actually have Smurfy, who's already put their settlement down. And what do you think of that first placement there?
Yeah, I mean, looking at these competitors here, we have a good mix of talent. We have some people that are relative newcomers to our league, as well as you mentioned, a former champion. Um, I mean, that 8-5-10 spot, it is an interesting choice here. I think, especially in contrast, you see John Bond immediately with that second pick, selecting that the 6-5-9 spot as well.
Hmm.
We do know that statistically
Very
the
smart spot.
6-5-9 spot is the best spot in the game from a pure resource density perspective. And especially
Hmm.
when you compare the two here between the 8-5-10 and the 6-5-9, um, the resource distribution is interesting to me. They both have basically a 4 spot, the 5 and the 9 for brick, as well as a 5 spot or a 3 spot for the wheat. The big difference here is that we're basically John Bond is trading wood for wheat. Slightly more production overall and a little bit better diversity of production as well. Especially, I think it's noteworthy too that wood spot is on there for John Bond because wood is not very you know plentiful. Looking at the board, we have a 6, a 10, an 11, and a 2, and the 11, 10, and 2 are not in ideal spots, kind of clustered around the outside. So I'm thinking if I'm John Bond and I'm getting that 6-5-9 spot here at the second pick, I feel really good. Of course, we'll see how it rolls out, but he set himself up pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. Oh,
Ooh,
and ooh,
wow.
that's
Well, we
that's
have a got to do Joey Donuts his due. The 8-4-3 spot, some good diversity right there. Can't really but I mean, my God, Jody coming in with the rapid two spots, quick succession, obviously knew what they wanted to do. And the bigger thing here is that immediate block off of John Bon on the 9-10 port with the wheat. What do you think?
Yeah. I think it's a strong play. I think she could very well cut off John Vaughn to the 10-5 spot because they have road in hand. They place
Yes.
their second to get the road in hand, and it's unlikely, I think, that Orange would go for a starting road.
Yeah.
Frankly,
I mean, huge
so
play.
yeah, I think that's a really sick play. I don't think there's much Orange can do. Their best play is to go for the sheep in the ore, and that'll still be a very solid game.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It obviously really messes up John Bond, who was in such a strong position, and now the building opportunities from their initial placement are going to be lax, and so hopefully they can find opportunities elsewhere. I think that the immediate first thought I have here when I look at Joni's placement is she doesn't have access to ore, but ore is one of those it's like a luxury resource. You don't need it to win the game. You can still get a lot done without it. And she's banking on getting some really great wheat production from that 4-8 spot that she can then churn into trades on the port. Be really interesting to see how this unfolds. We see John Bond, taking that 3-6-9, 3-6-9 spot. It's a good spot. I think you know John Bond obviously is well set up from a production standpoint. Good diversity of resources. Everything basically, if we're counting those little dots as a numerical quantifier of the amount of resources we expect John Bond to get. John Bond, every resource is at least a 4, right? So John
Yeah,
Bond
yeah,
will have
pretty much.
resources. The question that we're going to start to see here is how is John Bond going to be able to spend them? We said we're probably going to expect Joni to block off John Bond to the left. And then down below, there's not really a lot of great opportunities to build. And so, maybe this is a case of, density, cities, victory cards, but very interesting to see how it develops. And I'm looking at the board here. We're still waiting for Smurfy to place their final settlement. A lot of interesting things going on. I don't think there's a clear winner here. John Bond with that first placement felt pretty strong, but getting blocked off by Joni is really disruptive.
It is disruptive, but I think John Vaughn has by far the best starting position right now. All five resources with a great amount of production on each. You can buy dev cards, you can buy roads, you can buy settlements, you can buy cities, and going for the 3-to-1 port, which is ideal for this setup. And I don't know if you can ask for much more, honestly, even though you are going to get cut off.
Yeah, and I think watching us develop it is the age old question of resources versus position. John Bond positioning isn't amazing, but the resources are enviable. Yep, we have John
Yeah.
Bond with a quick development card purchase on their first turn. Already we can see that resource development. That's the both the diversity and just the pure numbers playing a role.
Yeah. That's five cars that they were able to generate already. And that's insane production. If it keeps up, then they'll be in good shape.
Yeah.
Red actually finally makes the cutoff, and yeah, I mean, to be expected. I guess they're going to get more wheat. They're going to have more production there, and it can only get better from
Oh,
there. So solid strat.
and we have Smurfy rolling the first 7 of the game and opting to put the robber on the unused spot. What do you think of that?
It's actually because if you notice, if the friendly robber is active. Um,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not sure if that was their choice. They can do whatever they want. At the end of the day, they can make their own settings. It could also be our fault, my fault. I'm not sure, but either way, they're playing with a friendly robber, which basically means they cannot place on any settlement hacks until that player has gone to 3 victory points or has settled really. Um, so honestly, fine. It doesn't really matter for now. The robber doesn't really matter unless someone comes out. But people are gonna prioritize roads here. They're gonna wait a little bit to settle so they don't get robbed from. Basically, that's gonna be the
Yeah.
strategy here.
Yeah, I think the standard rules that we usually play by are friendly robbery is not on, it's turned off, but of course each game is enabled to, if they want to change the settings, they can. And I mean, looking here with the friendly robbery, how do you think that is going to play into this match? Do you think it's going to favor anyone, or what kind of impact do you see?
I think generally with friendly robbers, you see that people with more road building will probably benefit. They won't have to uh, be forced to settle quickly for fear of not getting road production in the future. They can cut people off without even getting robbed from. There's a lot of interesting things you can do, but it's obviously a balance because you could get cut off yourself. You could lose the chance to settle as quick as you should. So it's kind of a balance there. You want to pace it out, but take advantage when you can, right?
Yeah, I think that typically we'll often see the two main strategies. Of course, people want to build settlements and build their cities, but it definitely feels like you either tend to find yourself going towards a more road heavy approach or development card approach. It's hard to win without either the largest army or a largest road, and so in this case, if you are on the a settlement card proposed, like John Bond already has 2 settlement cards and you're pulling knights, it's really hard to justify using them early if you're not using them to get a robber off your own placement. So I think that kind of assessment that maybe the road building setups are going to be a little bit more favored here, I think is I believe that, and we'll see how it plays out. I mean, quick call out here already. We got Joey Donuts up to 8. See if they can hold on to the cards. We've only had a couple sevens so far, but pretty light so far. We've had a few roads get built, nothing too much going on. A few development cards bought. Feels very much like the calm before the storm.
Yeah, I will say though, if you look at a blue setup, I think they're in a pretty tough spot to begin with. They don't have any wheat production, and it's going to be hard for them to get that anytime soon. Um, and the saying goes, right? No wheat equals defeat, and that saying is just for a reason. The only spot that I can really see as a viable wheat option at all is the 5-4, but even that is looking like it's going to get locked out by red settling on the 5-10. So
Yeah,
they're not going to have wheat for most of the game. They might have to go to the 3-for-1 port, but we'll see. We'll see if they can climb out of that.
yeah, and seeing maybe they'll be able to do some trading. We haven't really noticed too much trading right now. We can see right now blue is trying to offer, or for wheat has just upgraded their offer to ore and in timber for wheat, and seems to have successfully made a trade with Joni. And yeah, I think that's it's a really great insight. Like wheat is the only resource that is used for four of the five things you can possibly buy. The only thing you can't do with that wheat is build roads. But we can see, they're two roads away at least. Their initial road placement, you can see them, making that dive for that 5-4 spot that you called out. And if I'm
Yeah.
if I'm blue and I can lock on that 5-4 spot, I feel a lot better. Without it, it is going to be a tough path forward, and so that is definitely their first priority here. We'll see. That we can see they used a year of plenty. They got another two bricks, and they're already on the spot, and they have six in hand. I mean, good churn from them. I mean, that was the kind of churn they needed
Yeah.
to stay in the game.
Yeah, but they very much have a chance to get cut off by red here, depending on what they have and what they can do. We'll see. I mean, anything's possible. They could, even if blue's out on the spot, they could still connect and get longest road, and you never know what can happen from there, right? It is still anyone's game. The rolls
Oh, that's
happen,
a
and yeah, there it is.
yeah. And so we can see, the seven getting rolled. Not Joni having the con of not really being able to steal a resource with the friendly robber rules in effect, but no problem for them. They're able to build on that 10-5 spot. They have the resources in hand, and if you're blue here, it's I hate to say this too soon, but you're maybe out of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be tough. They can get to four with the longest road, and then maybe they can try to go for the 3-1 port, and then try to city dev card. Not really sure, but we'll see. We'll see what they do.
Yeah, and I think it's if you're blue here, like you kind of maybe you're kicking yourself in the back a little bit. It's definitely there's a reason we were heaping so much praise on John Bond with the resource diversity early on, because yeah, when you don't have access to a resource and you don't have an easy way to get it, you're forced to be at other people's whims. We saw earlier, blue, in order to get the wheat that they need to do a 2-for-1. And if they're going to be having the 2-for-1 the whole rest of the game, yeah, it's not the worst rate in the world, but the biggest thing is they're just going to be feeding so many needed resources to their rivals.
Yeah. You do see the settle here at the 2-for-1 brick
Yeah.
from green, and that'll be a strong spot. I think the next plan for them is to go to that 3-for-1 port, and then after that settle on the 10-9-2. They'll likely port all the brick for maybe wood, most likely ore long term, and try to dev card in city, and that'll be their game. And it's not a bad plan overall.
Yeah, I mean, basically a 5 is any resource they want. And we see it, eighth getting rolled.
Right.
And yeah, we're starting to reach this point where, very interested to see what is going on in people's hands. I think that, like, John Bond, had such a, interesting early start, has been surprisingly inactive. We're one road, a couple of development cards. The dice roll haven't really been in their favor. We've been seeing a lot of eights, not many sixes, and that's going to happen. Ideally, like things kind of get balanced out, but you are a little bit at the whims of the rolls sometimes.
Yeah, I think the two early dev cards. I'm going to assume that they're robbers because I think otherwise they would have played one of those dev cards. There's no reason to play a dev card if there's no robber on your spot. So, or there's no reason to play a knight if there's a robber on your not on your spot. So, I think she probably has two knights under there, and she's probably feeling terrible about it, hoping to get a year of plenty or something else that could help settle here at the
Yeah.
3-for-1. I think that's the next goal.
Yeah, and I think we might start to see the impact for red of not having any ore. Now that we've crossed that 3 victory point threshold, the robber can be placed on spots that actually have settlements, and we can see it's placed on red spot right here, completely locking them off of wood. They don't have ore. They're gonna really need to that 2-for-1 wheat port to pull through and see some fives, eights, and fours to get out of this jam.
Ooh, and yeah, and a road from Orange just to, I guess, get under 7, and they weren't able to make a trade for wheat, which I assume they were going to use for either a city or a settlement. So hopefully that 5 rolls for them. But we see now another 7, and Green has to discard.
Yes, and that's unfortunate. Green, passed their turn. They thought they were all right. They had I think four resources in hand, and resource, resource, resource. Robber. It is luck giveth and luck taketh.
Yeah, that's the way the game works.
Yeah, three
Um,
wheat going into back to the bank. And yeah,
yeah,
we're starting to see. It seems like we're a perceived enemy has developed in red. Just going between spot and spot, and they're at 3 victory points, and so they're really the only option for green here. But it could be tough if it just if we see like red doesn't have development card access, everyone else does. If they're just going to keep filtering around red spot, it's going to be a very tough thing to get out of.
yeah. It honestly is still anyone's game. I think actually right now um, I would say green has a very strong setup. On the same pace as everyone else. Kind of edging away from the robber because the spots aren't necessarily too scary, right? But they do have everything that they need, and they're on pace, they're on track, and they have the dev card, right? So I think a lot of good things going on there. Orange builds another road to try to beat blue to that spot. If orange beats blue to that spot, it's going to be a really tough game. It's going to be a really tough game for blue.
Yeah, and
So
yeah, and there's still hope here. I think like Green is in a position too where like they really are heavily reliant upon those brick spots being rolled. They don't have access to timber, they don't have access to ore as it is set up currently. Even if they build to that 10-9-2 spot, which I think seems to be the goal. I love the spot. Gives them lots of resources. They're really gonna to build those roads and build those settlements, they're really going to need to be relying upon that brick. And so I think we're going to see a. It will be really interesting to see how this develops for them because they don't really have easy access to development cards. They don't have really easy access to road building, but they're going to be generating lots of resources. So we know that they're going to be generating lots of wheat. We know there's a demand for wheat from some other competitors, and we've already kind of seen a decent amount of trade activity, and I think that's going to continue.
yeah, I think people have been pretty friendly. They haven't been like too greedy or anything like that. I think the game is pretty friendly overall, and we see here the 8 wheat being hit. It's probably the best spot overall to hit. It takes care of both of the leaders, the perceived leaders at least, and 8 wheat is always a strong spot.
Yeah, I mean, we see another 7 game roll, and this is shaping up to be a pretty slow is maybe not the right word to use so far, but because of the combination of a lot of every competitor here kind of has their own challenge. Whether it be lack of access to resources, lack of access to building opportunities, and between that and the high degree of sevens game rolled, we've only really seen a couple settlements get built. Besides for that, not too much action so far. We do, however, see Joey Donuts Blue getting longest road here, jumping up to 4. A little artificial, but competing for that spot. And I mean, orange and blue, whoever doesn't get the spot is going to be feeling the burn.
Yeah, I think investing 2 roads there very openly like that is it's going to be interesting. I think they're both very desperate, very open uh, and public about the fact that they want that spot. We'll see who gets there.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I mean, I think we're going to see it come to a head right here because and part of the reason I think that blue used those resources is blue spots have been hit rolling. They have been getting lots of resources because they're already back up to 11 even after expending their road resources here, and we can see that John Bon and Orange like at 7. I assume building that road there they don't have the resources, but hey, building that road doesn't stop Joey Donuts from building on the 12, 11, 6 spot here. So rolls an 8, up to 12 resources in hand. I mean, you have to expect they can settle here, right?
yeah, for sure. And I guess Orange just didn't have it and builds another road on the 12-11. But I think I would have rather seen them build on a 3 sheep actually, just lock down that 3-for-1 port, make sure that blue can't settle there and just like stiff them for any reason at all. Uh, and just take it from there. I think they could even cut off blue to the 8 ore and take even more and just gather space if they want to go that direction. I'm not sure what they're going for with the 12-11 road there.
Yeah, I think like they're obviously. I don't think they're building towards the 3-1 port on the ore at 12 because they're kind of have the opportunity already below. They could be trying to build towards that 2-1 sheep port. They do get protection from the 9 and the 3, and they could be in a position where like okay, go for the port. But you're also seeing red is building to that support as well. You see the immediate placement right there, and yeah, I think you're right. I think you're building that road in that position doesn't really lead to a lot of opportunity. I think that your assessment is spot on.
Yeah. I think Orange is in a tough spot. We'll see. They're at 8. Hopefully the 7 doesn't get rolled. But Blue is also at 12, which
Yeah,
is incredible, by the
Blue's
way.
been
But
riding the lightning
uh,
this whole game.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's how the game works sometimes, you know? And Green's thinking, what do you think? Green's obviously asking for wood, which makes sense. They don't produce any wood. What do you think Green's trying to do here?
I mean, Green needs to build a road. I think to try to get to that 10-9-2 spot. I
Okay.
looking at
Yeah.
the we see buying development cards. Green's in a position where that is clearly their best spot to build on. They're not going to fix their or wood problem. I think that if I'm them, I'm trying to build to that 10-9-2 spot right here in the bottom right, and then progress down to the 2-1 port on the 6 ore. The port's not going to really come into play too much, but you're going to get access to that ore. And I think that Green's in a
Hmm.
position where they know they're going to have resource scarcity. They can't really fix it. And so it's you hoard the brick, you hoard the wood, every opportunity you can, you get it, and you just hope that you generate enough.
Oh,
Ooh,
yeah.
all right.
So Orange actually just traded with Blue to get sheep and then gave 4 sheep for wood.
That
I'm
is
expecting a settle here,
Oh, that
which means
is
that Blue
painful.
traded.
Blue
Yeah.
just shot himself in the own foot, I would have to
Yep.
imagine.
That's right.
Because, we see,
So that's
like,
tough.
I assume that, that's the thing where it's like, if you're in that position, even if you really need brick, which, blue is only on the 4, maybe, anyway, you have to imagine blue was hoping that that was the one resource they needed to build their settlement and that, that orange wouldn't use it. But I think in that position, you can't take that risk.
Never. You can never trade with the person you're racing against.
Yeah, and
It's always a
so
bad idea.
yeah, I mean, we see the proof in the pudding right here. Orange building that spot, great spot for Orange. The 12 and the 11 are they might help. They're not huge. The big thing for them is getting even more wood production, which is going to help for them. But it's just they're in a game where they don't have a lot of great building opportunities because they were blocked off early by red, and so that settlement's just as important from a VP and a possible city spot as anything else.
Yeah, and I actually think at this point, if things kind of play out as they are right now, if Orange picks up some momentum, I think they have it in the bag. Even though you do see Blue at 5 and Orange at 3, they do have two dev cards, and you never know what that is. The 3-for-1 port is right there, and they do have some road building to expand. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, and you have to give big props here. Blue's strategy of holding on to so many development cards has paid dividends. They're able to 4-for-1 for a wheat, which remember they don't have any natural access to. They are able to get that city on their favorite spot. Huge. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you need to do to recover from getting cut off like that. Props to them. I will say I do want to note. Hey, Anish, where's the robber at?
It's still at the 10 wood.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm I'm not sure.
It's been
I
shuffling
mean, what do you
around
think
a
about
bit.
that?
I mean, here's what I think. It's been shuffling around a bit. It is. We're in a position here where, if you're looking at like blue and green and and orange, there's a lot of overlap between their spots. And
Yeah,
it's a position where orange unfortunately kind of has these spots they're doubled up on, and they can't really. And they're easy target. We can see that orange has 2 development cards in hand. Green has 3, and for red it's unfortunate because you have to like a lot of what red strategy has been. I think they've done a good job of getting to their spots before everyone else does. They're on 2 2-for-1 ports. They have 4 settlements already. They have the only resource they're not generating is ore, but I mean they are just getting pummeled by this robber.
yeah. I wouldn't even say it's the best spot to place the robber on. If you want to deal the most damage to any particular player, it's the 5 brick for me. You could also argue maybe if you think that uh, red is a threat, you could put it on the 8 wheat or the 4 wheat, especially. Because those give them resources, free resources. And we see Orange building a city
And
kind of out of nowhere, but
well,
this
I
was always
mean,
a good possibility.
yeah, if you know here, they traded wood for an ore to blue. Blue once again enabling orange.
Yep.
Yep. And for blue, it's a question here of being like, I wonder what they're going to do with the wood because they are on the 6 wood. It's not like they need to bank a wood because they might need it later. They can assume they'll probably generate one eventually, and they're in a
Yeah.
position here where I don't see any easy settlement opportunities for blue. The closest settlement opportunity is, I mean, they're completely cut off. They have an opportunity on the 8 ore. That is it. And so you can see they're
Yeah.
building towards that. They need the wood for that. I mean, it isn't in a position where if you're blue here, like you do kind of have to start wondering. They hopefully will be able to hold on to the longest road, but you have to kind of start counting, victory points. How are they going to get to 10? Even if they maintain the longest road, which is not a given, of course. Um, they're going to need to get to 8, and they're going to presumably have 3 settlements. So what, they make all 3 into cities and get 2 VPs? I mean,
Yeah, I mean it's always possible, but again, you have no wheat, right? So
yeah,
that's going to make it
and
super
so where are you going to
difficult.
get your 6 wheat from? Yeah,
Yeah, you can't. The key is you actually can never get wheat anymore. Like the wheat is gone.
yeah,
So
you have to
it's a
trade.
tough game the entire game. Yeah, you have to trade for it. But that's the thing. If I was blue, I would only trade for wheat and not trade for anything else because you produce everything else. So,
Yeah, and especially in a case where you're one for one and then one of your competitors gets a
hmm
city immediately afterward. You one for one the previous turn for a resource that for a brick which you have access to, and then that leads to settlement. And it's some decision making like that could be making their life a little bit tougher, but we'll see how they pull it out.
yeah. Green has been a 3 for a bit, but they have had the 3 dev cards for a bit, and they haven't used them. So, what do you think is going on there? And they do build, so they're at 4 now with
Yeah,
3 dev cards.
we talked a little bit earlier about how Green is going to have a lot of struggles because they don't have good access to ore or good access to wood, but it's been a pretty trade heavy environment, and so they've been able to get where they need. They have 4 settlements. I like these settlements, and 3 development cards. That's the thing; they could be anything, and it could be, it could be a soldier. We'll see on their turn to assume they'll use it if it's a soldier. If they're all 3 soldiers, that's great for them. They can basically ensure that they're not messed with. They can get to largest army. Or, if they're the year of plenties or monopolies or even victory points, it gives them a lot of flexibility down the road. And so, in a position like this where it's pretty close between I think orange, blue, and green, those 3 development cards could end up being the difference.
Yeah, I think it's always scary and always makes you a target. And I think that's part of why you see that the 8 wheat again is getting robbed. But it's hard to say because maybe those don't even all necessarily lead to a victory point, right? Like a year of plenty might help you settle and get a victory point, but it also might not. Maybe you just use it because you have so many and you got to use them at some point, right? Like you never know. Um, and
Yeah.
we do see blue again does settle on the 3 for 1 port, so that's a great spot. Finally did it, and they finally have 3 spots that they've settled on that they can turn into
Yeah,
cities.
I mean, and that's the huge thing. Now they roll an 8. That's enough ore to make a city. Great. And so the thing is, they're going to need to really be leaning on that 3 for 1 port, trade in for wheat, trying to build cities. There is a path here for them, and
Hmm.
maybe it's a little tougher, and maybe they've made it a little tougher on themselves, but you can see it. All right, and we
The
see
good thing is,
we do see
yeah.
red with the flurry trades. And I want to note earlier they were desperately trying to trade resources for 2 ore, and they end up trading 2 trees and a brick to Joy Donuts blue for 2 ore, and then using the bank to get their additional ore. And I mean, it is the lesson of this game is if you're in the game with blue, they're going to give you what you need.
Yeah, yeah. I think again, trading for the road building doesn't necessarily align with what is going to help you win this game long term. I think it'll help you keep road, but you generate road building resources anyway. So I think you don't have to be too scared of trading for them, and you could have used that three ore either to trade for wheat or just for future city, depending on how things shook out.
Yeah, and I think maybe if you're blue, you're hoping that all this trading is gathering you goodwill. You're gonna be able to get lots of trades, but I mean, if you think you're generating goodwill and you just get hit with that robber there, that's tough.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's no such thing as like real goodwill. I would say. I think anything goes,
Oh,
and
but blue
you,
being saved with no development cards in hand, that that robber could have stick there for a while, and that's that is the best thing that's
yeah,
going for them is that
really
good
lucky.
spot. Huge 7 for them, huge.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I guess the game realized that he needed some help, so that's how it works. RNG. The five we just hit, which I think is a good spot to hit. I don't think it's the best spot to hit, but they do connect, and they definitely probably lock down longest road here. I don't think anyone else is really going to try.
Yeah,
Maybe Green could, but it would still be a large effort and
yeah, and
not
that,
really
and
worth it.
that's the kind of things they need to do to win this game, to stay in this game. I mean, and we're seeing like I wonder. Of course, that 5 wheat spot's a great spot, but like Green's in an interesting position where they could have easily hit Green here. They didn't. Of course, Green's at 4 settlements, maybe looks a little bit less threatening, and those 3 VPs. I mean, that's a deterrent.
And keep in mind, for these games and in this section of the tournament,
Oh,
in this stage of the
right back.
tournament,
And we see
yeah,
Green
right back.
immediately using the Knight, which we hypothesized they had. Didn't need to use it, was not on their spot. I think they're in a position where they've now used 2 Knights. They're probably trying to make sure they lock down that largest army, kind of stay ahead of the curve, and that kind of more generous usage of Knights always suggests to me that they have extras in hand, and they're in a use it or lose it position.
Yeah, and they are probably going to lock down largest army, and they might even have two VPs in hand, so they'll be very scary. Keep in mind for this stage of the tournament, it's actually 3 points for first, 1 point for second, 1 point for third, and 0 points for last. So there is some incentive to not be last place. So just keep that in mind. Some of these players at this point, they could look to throw just to try to solidify their third place or second place. They could look to do some interesting things here. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think intentionally or unintentionally, like that's a strategy I think plays into a position that, like for example, Blue has found themselves in where they probably recognized pretty early on, and we talked about it. They had a very difficult path to victory, and they've been doing a lot of trades that have kind of enabled others, but also been able to kind of keep them in this game. And so, of course, maybe it's a competition against Green here for Blue. It's still tougher, because we've seen them both enable both orange and red. So it's not really in a position I think where we're seeing they're propping up one person.
Yeah. Who do you think is actually leading this game?
I mean, in my position, I have to like the people that are generating more resources. I have to like orange. Orange's position I think is still great. They have access to every resource at a good clip. They have access to a 3-for-1 port. And I think it's going to be key to see if they can figure out a way to kind of close that gap at the very end. Maybe they are able to generate enough momentum that they have lots of city opportunities that they can use. They have another settlement opportunity on the 6-2 spot. Maybe largest road, largest army are a bit hard to attain here because you have to imagine blue and green are going to get them. But if you were to ask me between who I'd rather be between orange and red, I think I'd have to pick orange at this point.
Yeah, I think I agree. But time is running out. You gotta make some decisions quick. You gotta actually build something quick. Next spot is a 6-2, 2-for-1 wood port, which is going to be super nice, but for two reasons. Once you get the city on the 369, every 6 and 5 is a free city, and you get the 2-for-1 port when you have the six wood spot. So if you put another city on the 6 wood, you get two free resources there. So super powerful if you can settle there. That'll give you everything you need. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I think like I know to me so much as between it really does feel like we have two different paradigms going on, where we have red and orange who are in this kind of resource heavy game where They have access to a lot of them. I will note, I do think the reason I like Orange because I think Orange has better access to a variety of resources. But they're kind of in a resource game. I don't think either one can
Yeah,
reasonably think they're going to get largest warrior, largest army, because that seems to be very much held down by blue and green.
yeah, which is a nice balance, I would say. Like everyone's going for like kind of different things. They aren't necessarily competing too much anymore. Like you saw, a lot of the slow development early was because a lot of them were competing for space, right? So when people lost races, they put a lot into that race and they lost and they got set back in the development. So that's why it was a bit slow. Now you see it pick up because there's less competition for these spots because now the production is up. You have more time to kind of plan, you generate resources quickly, and you can easily build two roads and a settle, right? So there's a lot of things you can do as the game moves further into the late game.
Yeah, and I mean, and we see Orange able to build that fifth settlement, continuing their trajectory, and but despite all that, we see it, immediate, 2-for-1 from orange to red for a wheat. It seems like they wanted to get locked down a development card, good too. And it's interesting, like you're in a position here where you really have to think that, like, for example, green's path to victory, that might be able to go up to 6. But I always prefer to be in a stage of this game where you're relying on resources and not holding on to the largest road or largest army. It is a longer journey to travel, but it does give you a lot more flexibility going into the late game.
Yeah. Then we see red steals from orange and puts themselves over 8. Now, orange now has 0 resource cards left, which makes me think that red might have known what orange had for sure. And that's why they were then able to settle there, as you see on the 3-for-1 port.
Yeah, that's great insight. And we see, like, red getting their port in, and yeah, it's really starting to feel like it's a two-horse race between red and orange. Well, if green gets their largest army here, which you have to assume they can get that at will, everyone is at 6 victory points in terms of representation. But they're all going to be, once green uses a knight, they're all going to be at similar development cards in hand, and so you have to assume that those all kind of balance out. And it's just so hard to be able to beat the research production that orange and red are developing here.
Yeah, especially as it gets later and later in the game, the resources matter.
And I will call out here, Orange is using a second knight, which they have to. They have to get off their spot. If that third development card in their hand is a knight, it really puts the pressure on Green to use their knight on the next turn to make sure they can lock down largest army.
And it's also very possible that Green just wasn't using the knight to not seem strong, right? Not make it sure that they have largest army. I think they'll play it here, lock down largest army, and they'll be at 6 with 3 dev cards. That's
I
super,
mean,
super scary.
yeah, it's the kind of position where they're not really generating a lot of resources, but if those 3 VPs are in hand, I mean, they can really come from
Yeah.
behind to win this. And that's the thing with, like, development cards. They always can be a great equalizer because you know based off luck, you wouldn't think they're victory cards. I mean, I can say in my own personal history, I've won a game with drawing 5 development cards in a game and having all 5 be victory points.
Yeah, yeah. And that can always happen. And I think that's what makes the game fun, right? Like you never know. It is a lot of luck. The luck goes both ways, and dev card strat is a very reliable strat. It's actually very impressive. If Green pulls this off with a dev card strat with no access to ore, very very impressive.
Yeah, and I mean, those are the kind of storylines you'd love to see happen. We see a 12 getting rolled, orange getting there, or in yeah, I mean, you're in a position here where you know oh my god, red is at 16 cards in hand with a monopoly to steal
9
9
sheep.
sheep. Well, I mean, not only that, they have a 2-for-1 sheep pork.
Yeah, this is a huge huge
Yeah,
turn.
it was
The only
earlier we were like,
issue,
how's the 2-for-1 sheep pork going to help them? They don't really have a lot of
yeah,
sheep, but
this is yeah. This is exactly the time. And the only issue I'll say is, I mean, we'll see what they do here, but they're trying to make some trades for ore.
I mean, if I'm anyone
So we'll
else here,
see.
I'm not gonna ever. I'm not gonna try to
Yeah,
get them in a position here.
but they also have 0 dev cards, so they really are at a pure 6. If they do city, then they'll be at 7. I'm not sure. I'm too scared of that, honestly. I
Yeah,
think
we
there are
see.
bigger threats.
We see a triple delve card purchase here. which
Yeah,
a
what do you think of
triple
that?
it's interesting because triple dev card obviously tells you they did have the resources in hand to city. They probably could
Yeah.
have they maybe could have citied and still bought a dev card. It's interesting, I think that like they are in a position where their city options aren't jaw dropping. They own
Hmm.
all the they have a there's a 9-10 and a 5-10 over here that they could do. Those three development cards fascinating to me. I think you can't really make a play for largest army at this point. I think that year of you take a city over a year of plenty or monopoly or anything. I have to imagine they're going victory point fishing.
Yeah, I actually like the move. I think if you do city, you city on the 5-10, so that you get a free resource with every five.
Yeah,
But I think the three dev cards is very interesting. You're just hoping they're not Robert because you're probably not going to win that race. Although green doesn't play theirs, so maybe orange can steal it here, but they probably would have played it.
yeah, yeah. I think kind of if I had to pick, I'd probably lean more. I've always been a proponent that if you're generating more resources, you usually are in a better position. And so I think I still would have
Yeah.
leaned City here. Just I think it's a point where you're but maybe you are in a position here where if you're red, you kind of have that realization that we have that like green could be in a theoretically very scary place. I will say green didn't use a knight on their turn. It's an interesting thing to point out. They could just be sandbagging. They could have a lot of faith. It seems if I'm I think if I'm looking ahead, and if I'm red and I see that green didn't do that on their turn, I'm thinking, well, green isn't probably as scary, because the nightmare scenario we're picturing is green has exactly three VPs in hand and one knight, and I think if you had a knight in that case and only one, you'd use it.
You would have to for
Yeah,
sure.
because especially because orange is at two as well, blue is at two as well, and it's going to be really hard to overcome a largest army. It suggests to me that green has probably multiple knights in hand, and so they're not as scary.
Maybe I wouldn't have read it that way. I would have just taken. I would just locked it down because it's
Yeah,
always easier to keep it than steal
yeah,
it.
I think I still would have done as well. I mean, there could be a scenario where they don't have a knight in hand, and then that is
I think that's
also
that's what's happening.
yeah.
I think they just got pretty unlucky with it. Absolutely.
I mean, unlucky
They
or
would have
lucky.
liked
If
night.
those are four VPs, they're saying they're
Well,
eight.
yeah, that's true. That's true. So you never know. But yeah, I mean, I really don't know who's winning. Even red right now is at six with three dev cards. I'm not talking about that. So like, I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
I think red and green are very very scary because of the mystery. You don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. I think I stand. I think like orange is still. I think I would prefer to be in Orange's position in the vacuum. After that last
Hmm.
monopoly, it's a little closer. I'll be honest. I'd still think
Hmm.
that blue is in a tough position. Blue has to figure out a way to get to third. If I'm them, that's my goal. Maintain that third position, make sure you're not last.
Yeah.
I think the path to victory is much tougher there. But they buy another
Yeah.
development card, maybe brings them a little closer. I mean, you know, we have 9 development cards in hand right now. And
This is that's when the game gets good
yeah,
because
and
no one knows what anyone else
it's
has.
also in a position where, you can kind of look at the little tracker we have here above the names, and you can see there are 1 to 9 development cards left according to the deck. And with the rate it's been going, I think it's probably in the lower end of that spectrum.
And
Here we see it.
finally,
Yep.
so crazily enough, Green deferred using the knight, which is very questionable to me. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that because everyone else was at two knights. That could have easily gone wrong for Green, but
Yeah.
maybe they had more knights behind, like you said.
Yeah. Maybe in a position where like, hey, I can use 3 or 4 in a row, and so I'm not too worried about if I lose it. It is interesting if you do have that many though. You have to imagine you start using them sooner, just because if you
You
don't use
you you
them,
have to, yeah. Because you can at least steal a resource, right? Like you can do something with it. Like at the end of the day, if you just don't play your knights, then they're literally useless, right? So you got to play your dev cards. And we see a city here with eight resources still
yeah, the
to
two for
go with
one
a three for
port.
one port and a two for one port. Yeah,
Yeah, the 2 for 1 port, letting them get the 2 wheat that they needed. I mean, they pull back into 7. If they can, if they're in a position here where they can city again or they can buy a
they're
few
trying
development,
to.
the field development cards, like you see they're trying to offer for that ore. I have to imagine that one ore is what they need to city. Otherwise, if they, if I'm orange here and I can pull two development cards, I take that. It puts you up to a position where you can be, if they have a VP in hand already, they can win theoretically. We're at a point in the game where a lot of things can happen.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure what's going on here because they would not have traded. Ooh, road, or I'm not sure what's going on here, but maybe they'll try to settle on the six ore. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. I think I would have much rather settle on six ore, but um, it's a spot. It's a settlement spot, so you can't fault it too much.
Yeah. All right. I mean, it's on Blue's turn. We're at the point of the game, yeah, where things can change very quickly.
Yeah. Blues at nine, but again, not very compatible resources. Keep that in mind because there's no wheat. The wheat is going to make everything difficult, and you see him asking for wheat. At nine cards, something's got to give. I'm not sure exactly how to spend it. Um, you could play some roads and try to get to that eight or spot, but that's a terrible spot. But maybe you just got to do it. We see that trade happen, getting the wheat, and what does he do here? Okay, and a road and settle. Okay, that's actually not that bad. That's a pretty good turn. Um, two dev cards too, so he could potentially be at nine. Um, and red plays a knight and gets even at three and is at 11 resources. So in a pretty good spot, but also maybe could be better because I don't think the depth cards are enough to just chill at six. Um, so yeah, we'll see. Green's also at nine. Everyone's been over because the production is so massive at the stage of the game. Uh, Green could be at nine and win in this turn itself. You never know. But we see red finally settling. Everyone's going to probably be able to settle our city in any given turn at this point, just depending on how the rules break out. But we see red take that settlement spot at seven, potentially nine. Could steal largest army if green does not play another knight here.
Yeah, I want to make sure we give our props to all the competitors here. I think you know it is an extremely closely fought game here at the end, and I think that of course, while we might have competitors that we think are in better positions or others, it can really feel like it can go any sort of way. I mean, red. If red's at three knights deployed, if they have another knight in hand and green fails to use a knight here, red can steal largest army, go up to nine. All they need is one VP. Could be the VP they have in hand, perhaps. Could be just building another city. I mean, it's in a position where red, and it feels like the tone of this game has shifted ever since red used that massive monopoly card.
Yeah, it's now everyone's at seven. You could not write this better. But we do know that green does not have three victory points. They would have won. They might have two. Um, we'll see. I mean, this
If you
is
have a
this is
knight in
crazy.
hand, I mean, if I think if you're in a position where if you're green and you have a knight in hand, you have to use it here.
You have to. But they've also not done that before and been okay. So I don't know. You never know.
Yeah, we're talking all this,
Um,
and it can still kind of come out. And if you're in a position where we know green has at least one non VP in hand, and so if it's not a knight, if it's a knight, we think we'd have to do. If it's
yeah.
not a knight, you're still in a position where if you're going to be buying development cards continually, reaching to the end of the game, you probably want to use them. We have a lot of development cards sitting in hand now. I think we're about to see. I'd give us probably one or two more turn rotations, and then we're done.
Yeah. I think you have to prioritize buying depth cards right now if you can't do anything else. Because you need to empty that dev card stack. Like that's your goal right now. Spend all your resources because once it's gone, you can't even get them again. What if you miss out on great dev cards that would help you instantly win? You never know. I would defer to overbuilding even cities at this stage, building settlements. I would defer to buying dev cards because you never know what's in the deck, and that the dev cards at this stage when they're so sparse will massively alter the game. And we do see a dev card being bought there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we might see them all get pulled this game. And yeah, at this point, it's like it's closing that gap. All right, we see Jonas using that as well, getting up to three. I'll say, call it like Green did not use the knight. If you're red and you have a knight in hand, you feel like serendipity has come down, especially having robbed here. And let's see, they do not use it. I think they don't have one.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say. Like, this is crazy close. I mean, this is the first game of the tourney. Like, you could not write this better, man. Like, I
I
don't even
mean,
know who's winning.
so we know they don't have a knight. I mean, we don't,
Yeah, that's
we don't know
they.
for a
Yeah,
fact, but the opportunity
they
was
def.
so
Yeah,
huge there for them to use a knight because they get it off their spot before rolling. They lock down largest army, and so I said we have to assume they're two VPs, and they're at 9. It's so
and
close.
discards. Two discards here.
Yeah, and so that could be game altering here. I mean, if you're red, you're so happy you're able to get down to 6.
Yeah. Yeah, crazy timing too. Like I don't know. Like I could easily see Green at two VPs because they've had them for a while. In which case they're trying to city maybe, but I don't. I just don't think they're getting the roles. They're not getting the production, and they had 8 there, and they had lost 4 resources just like that. So the game goes quick. They move it to the 8 or for blue, which I think is a slight mistake, just because I think blue is not really a super huge threat. They could have 8 max. Maybe they have that extra knight, which would be crazy. Um, but I think red is more of a threat at this
Green,
point because
Green getting up to 8.
yeah, and could potentially challenge for road here. So keep that
Yeah,
in mind.
I mean, I'm still gonna call out here. Blue, used a knight last turn. They could have another knight in hand. We've now seen 11 knights get deployed. Is there 14 in the deck?
I think it's 13 or 14. I don't remember honestly, but
Hmm.
this is why we started commentating again, so we learn the rules of the game. Um,
And I mean, there's been
but
one
yeah,
Monopoly used. I think 1 year of Plenty and 1 Rhodes. Those are probably still floating around too. I mean, it does feel like it can. It's a point where like it can be anyone's game. We think that there's a lot of opportunities we think we for some of the competitors, but it really has felt like those opportunities haven't been capitalized in some ways. In other ways, like there's been some really great plays from players that we thought were at disadvantage.
yeah, like blue
12.
especially, like to climb out of that spot is very impressive. And we see a knight being played. Everyone's at 3 and 5 brick. Targeting who is, I mean, everyone is a huge threat at this point. The 5 brick is the place to go to harm someone the most. That someone just happens to be green. Quite unfortunate, but that's the game.
Yeah. I said now, there's 1 or 2 more nights left. It could be that no one.
Okay, let me know
All
when
right.
we're
Yep.
good.
And we're back. I think we had a little quick technical
Okay,
issue.
and we do see red play use road building, place 2 roads for settlement spot. It's that means that it could be a VP left, it could not be, but that's 8, maybe 9 if they settle. But they don't, and they go for another dev card. Yeah, I mean, pretty good play, but I'm not sure I would have gone there just because they could always be cut off. At this point, you care more about settlement spots than the production. The 9-12 versus the 10 wood, I would rather take the 10 wood. It's safer.
Yeah. I mean, orange is at 14 in hand. Can they end it here?
They could. They could. It depends. Could be
But
9 VPs. It's
well,
not 9 VPs. It could be 9 VPs now though. But they do city. That means that with every 6 they get 2 free resources.
I mean, I think we're in a position where it could be 998 across the board. A 9 does
Oh,
not have a
and a
VP, and
1.
that's a win. That's a
Yeah.
win on the VP. Yeah, 10, 9, 8, 8. You can look at those final standings right here. I mean, we have, you know, by lieu of the tiebreaker, unfortunately, we have, Blue falling to last place. John Bond taking the victory. I mean, extremely close game, very well played. I mean, give props to the competitors.
Yeah, it was a really hard fought game. I was super entertained. I had no idea who was going to win. Blue had a really rough start, but really pulled it through at the end. Everyone had a chance. Like everyone had a chance at the end, and it came down to the production, I guess, at the end of the day. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I think that we were always talking about how Orange had great production, and it got was closer than maybe some of us expected. Able to pull through the victory. I mean, great game from all the competitors, and what a great start to the season. Excited to see where the rest of the
Yeah,
season goes. And yeah, thank you for joining us, Anish. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time.
thank you.
All right, bye.